If Ryan Walker moved 1 inch closer, I was going to blame the storm, the tent, and possibly the entire state of Colorado before admitting my heart was beating like it had somewhere urgent to be. At 2:13 in the morning, rain hammered the nylon above my head so hard it sounded like 1,000 impatient fingers drumming against the table. Wind shoved at the little one-person tent from every direction, bending the walls inward before they snapped back with nervous little pops. Somewhere beyond the thin fabric, thunder rolled through the mountains, low and endless. And 6 inches from my face lay Ryan Walker, my camping rival, my personal wilderness nightmare, and the only man alive who could somehow look irritating while doing absolutely nothing. His eyes were closed. His dark blonde hair was still damp from the rain, curling slightly at his forehead, and one arm rested awkwardly across his chest because there wasn't enough room for either of us to lie normally. I stared at the ceiling. This was fine. Completely fine. Two grown men could share approximately 7 square feet of shelter without making it weird. People survived avalanches together. People crossed oceans in tiny boats. Surely I could survive one night beside Ryan Walker without committing a felony or embarrassing myself. The tent shifted under another gust. Ryan's sleeping bag slid 1/2 inch toward mine. I immediately noticed. Obviously, this was because I possessed excellent spatial awareness and not because I had spent the last 20 minutes tracking the exact location of his shoulder. Ryan opened one eye. "Miller, what?" I whispered. "Your knee is touching me." I looked down. Our sleeping bags were pressed together near our knees. Technically, there were several layers of fabric involved, which meant this accusation was scientifically irresponsible. "Your knee invaded my territory." His mouth twitched. "My territory?" "Yes. There's an invisible border. Inside your tent. Especially inside my tent." Another gust rattled the poles. Ryan glanced upward. "You want me to file for a camping visa?" "I'd deny it." "Good to know." He closed his eyes again, apparently satisfied with ruining my night, and then sleeping peacefully through the consequences. I hated him. That needed to remain extremely clear. I had hated Ryan for almost 2 years. Ever since the first group hike where he'd reached the summit 12 minutes before me and greeted me with that infuriating smile like he'd been waiting all morning just to watch me lose. Since then, everything between us had become a competition. Trails, campfires, navigation, fishing, even coffee once, although I still maintain that instant espresso should have disqualified him on moral grounds. And now, after spending 2 years trying to beat him at everything, I was listening to him breathe 6 inches away from me while a storm tried to relocate our campsite to another county. This was not how I had pictured winning. Ryan suddenly spoke without opening his eyes. "You're staring." My stomach dropped. "I'm looking at the wall. I'm between you and the wall." "Unfortunately." He laughed quietly, and something about that sound felt different inside the cramped darkness. Softer. Closer. Too close. Lightning briefly turned the tent pale white, and for 1/2 second I saw his face clearly. He wasn't smirking anymore. He was looking directly at me. "Ethan," he said, quieter this time. Ryan almost never called me Ethan. To him, I was Miller, loser, amateur, or occasionally city boy when he wanted to start a fight before breakfast. I swallowed. "What?" His expression changed into something I couldn't read. "Nothing. That's suspicious. Go to sleep. You're in my tent. You don't get to give orders. Then stop watching me breathe." I opened my mouth, found absolutely nothing useful, and stared furiously at the ceiling instead. 10 hours earlier, Ryan Walker had still been the man I planned to defeat before sunset. I hadn't known a storm was coming. I hadn't known his tent would be destroyed. And I definitely hadn't known that before morning I would discover the real reason Ryan had spent 2 years competing with me. 10 hours earlier, Ryan Walker was still safely classified as a problem I could solve by beating him at something. The trouble started at 4:07 that afternoon when I pulled into Pine Ridge Campground and found him standing beside a dark green SUV with a coffee mug in one hand and the expression of a man who had personally arranged the mountains for his convenience. "Miller," he called. I had not even closed my car door. "Walker, you are late." I checked my watch. "I am 7 minutes early. I have been here for 20. That does not make me late. It makes you lonely." His grin appeared immediately. There it was. That stupid grin. 2 years earlier, our hiking group had introduced us on a 6-mile trail outside Denver. Ryan had reached the summit 12 minutes before me, then handed me a bottle of water and said, "Good effort. Good effort." 3 syllables. That was all it took to begin a rivalry that had somehow survived 23 hikes, 9 camping trips, 4 fishing weekends, and 1 deeply unnecessary argument about the correct way to make coffee outdoors. I opened my trunk and started unloading my gear. Ryan glanced at the neatly packed containers. "Did you bring a camping stove or a small restaurant?" Preparation is a skill. So is packing light. You brought 3 different jackets. Weather changes. You brought an electric lantern shaped like a bear. He looked toward his campsite. That is practical and charming. I hated that I almost laughed. Almost. Our friends were scattered across the clearing, setting up tents beneath tall pines, while late afternoon sunlight painted everything gold. The air smelled like needles, dirt, and somebody's overly ambitious chili. I carried my tent toward an open patch near the trees. Ryan followed. Of course he followed. "That spot slopes," he said. "Barely. You will notice when you wake up in the corner of your tent." "Thank you, Ranger Walker." "You are welcome, City Boy Miller." I dropped my bag. "Race you." Ryan blinked. "To do what?" "Set up camp." His smile widened. "You really want to lose before dinner?" 8 minutes later, I was tightening my final guy line while Ryan stood beside his completed tent drinking coffee. I stared at him. "You cheated." "How?" "I do not know yet." Strong argument. "I am investigating." He laughed and walked past me, then stopped. One of my stakes had loosened in the soft ground. Without saying anything, Ryan crouched, reset it at a better angle, and pressed it firmly into place. "There," he said. I frowned. I could have done that. I know. That answer bothered me more than another joke would have. Ryan stood and headed toward the fire ring, calling something to our friends. I watched him go, irritated for reasons I could not explain. The annoying thing about Ryan was not that he always tried to beat me. It was that whenever I fell behind, he somehow ended up helping me catch up. On steep trails, he would stop to photograph scenery until I reached him. If I forgot something, he mysteriously had an extra. Once, after I twisted an ankle on an easy hike and insisted I was fine, Ryan walked the final 3 miles at my pace without mentioning it once. I had decided that was pity. Pity was easier to understand than whatever else it might have been. "Ethan," someone shouted from the picnic table. "We are choosing teams." I headed over and found Ryan already there. Our friend Megan held up 2 trail maps. "Tomorrow morning. Navigation challenge. Winning team picks the route for the fall trip." Ryan looked at me. I looked at Ryan. Everyone else groaned before either of us spoke. "Absolutely not," Megan said. I recognized those faces. Ryan folded his arms. "What faces?" "The faces you two make before turning a relaxing weekend into the Olympics." "I am perfectly relaxed," I said. Ryan nodded. "He looks very relaxed." "Nobody asked you." Megan sighed and handed us separate maps. "Fine. You are competing individually. Please behave like adults." Ryan leaned toward me. "Good luck, Miller." I smiled sweetly. "You are going to need it more." His eyes stayed on mine for 1 strange second longer than necessary. Then he laughed and walked away. I told myself I wanted to wipe that smile off his face. What I did not notice, yet was something everyone else in our group had apparently noticed long ago. Ryan competed with plenty of people, but he only watched one of them after he walked away. By 5:30, what had started as a friendly camping weekend had become a competition so ridiculous that Megan threatened to confiscate both of our trail maps. Ryan and I competed over everything. Who could collect usable firewood faster? Who could identify the distant ridge without checking a map? Who could boil water first? At one point, Ryan claimed he could tie a bowline faster than I could, which was how 6 perfectly reasonable adults ended up standing around a picnic table watching 2 grown men race with pieces of rope. "Done," Ryan said. "That knot looks emotionally unstable," I said. "It is a bowline. It looks nervous." "You lost." "I reject the results." Megan covered her face with both hands. "I regret inviting both of you." Ryan laughed, and I tried not to notice how different he looked when he laughed for real. His usual competitive smile was sharp and deliberate, designed specifically to annoy me. This one softened his entire face. I looked away before my brain could develop an opinion. Later, while everyone prepared dinner, I discovered Ryan beside the fire ring splitting kindling into smaller pieces. "You know," he said without looking up, "if you spend tomorrow arguing with your compass, I am going to win before breakfast." My compass respects me. Your compass does not have feelings. That is exactly what someone with an unhealthy relationship with maps would say. He shook his head, smiling. I reached for the camp stove and discovered a loose connection on the fuel line. Before I could inspect it, Ryan was beside me. Hold on. I can fix it. I know. There were those two words again. He checked the fitting, tightened it, then stepped back. Now fix it yourself next time. I stared at him. You are remarkably generous for someone allegedly trying to defeat me. Maybe I want you at your best. Why? Ryan looked at me for a moment. Winning is boring otherwise. There. That made sense. Annoying sense, but sense. I pointed at him. Tomorrow, when you are wandering 3 miles in the wrong direction, remember this conversation. I will wave when I pass you. Dinner became another unofficial contest when Ryan complimented Megan's chili and I accused him of strategic flattery. He responded by giving her his last cornbread muffin, which Megan immediately declared proof that Ryan was the superior camper and possibly the superior human being. Corruption, I said. Hospitality, Ryan corrected. Bribery, jealousy, delusion. You two know you can communicate without turning every sentence into a tennis match, right? Megan asked. Ryan and I answered, no, at exactly the same time. Everyone laughed. I did too, although Ryan was looking at me again. Not casually, not accidentally. His attention lingered for a second, then he glanced toward the western sky. His expression changed. A bank of dark clouds had gathered beyond the mountains, distant enough to seem harmless beneath the warm evening light. Ryan pulled out his phone and checked the forecast. Weather might turn tonight, he said. The forecast said clear. Mountain weather does not care what your phone said this morning. Neither do you, apparently. Ryan ignored that and walked over to my tent. He tested one of the guy lines, then checked the trees above us. You should move this about 20 feet east. I stared at him. You picked your site. I picked mine. This is not a competition. Everything is a competition with you. Something flickered across his face, gone before I could name it. Not everything, Ethan. He walked away before I could answer. A few minutes later, I went to grab my jacket from the car and heard voices behind the trees. Ryan was talking quietly with Megan. I would have kept walking if I had not heard my name. You could have skipped this trip, Megan said. Ryan was silent for a moment. Then he answered. I know, but Miller is the reason I came. I stopped cold. Of course. I should have known. Tomorrow was not merely another friendly challenge to Ryan. He had come here because of me. Because apparently beating me once again was worth an entire weekend. I turned back toward camp before either of them saw me, suddenly more determined than ever. Behind me, Megan started to say something else, but I was already too far away to hear the rest. By 6:15, I had decided that Ryan Walker was not going to ruin my weekend, which was difficult because Ryan Walker seemed determined to save it. I was tightening the straps on my day pack when my phone buzzed. Against the picnic table, a weather alert filled the screen. Severe thunderstorms possible after 8. Strong wind. Heavy rain. I looked toward the western ridge. The dark clouds had thickened into a long gray wall, swallowing the last warm light above the mountains. Everybody should secure loose gear before it gets dark, Ryan called from across camp. Naturally, he sounded calm. Ryan could probably announce the arrival of a tornado while making coffee. Megan immediately started moving chairs beneath the shelter. The others checked stakes and rain flies. I returned to my pack. Ethan. I did not look up. What? Move your tent. Of course. We already discussed this. No. I suggested it. You turned it into an argument. Because you walked over and started inspecting my campsite like a disappointed park ranger. Ryan stopped beside me. There is a shallow drainage path behind those trees. If the rain gets heavy, water could run directly through your site. I glanced toward my tent. The ground looked perfectly normal. Dry pine needles. Flat dirt. Nothing remotely resembling a river. It is fine. It is fine now. Ryan, I know how to camp. I know you do. That should have ended the argument. Somehow, it made me more irritated. Maybe because I could still hear the sentence from behind the trees. Miller is the reason I came. I zipped my pack harder than necessary. You do not need to supervise me just because you want tomorrow to be another opportunity to prove you are better. Ryan went still. What is that supposed to mean? Nothing. That sounded remarkably like something. Forget it. Gladly. Move the tent. I laughed once. Unbelievable. Ethan, look at the sky. Thunder murmured somewhere beyond the ridge. Closer now. Ryan lowered his voice. For once in your life, stop trying to beat me and listen. That landed harder than it should have. Maybe stop treating me like someone who constantly needs your help. His expression changed. The frustration disappeared first. What replaced it looked almost like disappointment. That is not what I am doing. Really? Really? Then what are you doing? Ryan opened his mouth, but Megan called from the fire. Ring. Ryan, can you help with the canopy? He looked toward her, then back at me. For 1 second, I thought he might answer. Instead, he exhaled. Secure everything. Please. He walked away. The word please bothered me for reasons I refused to examine. I checked my tent again anyway. Not because Ryan told me to. Absolutely not. I added 2 stakes and tightened every line until the rain fly looked ready for military inspection. Across the clearing, Ryan helped lower the canopy while everyone packed food into sealed containers. The first drop of rain landed on my hand. Then another. Then 5 at once. Within minutes, the gentle tapping became a steady hiss through the trees. Well, I muttered. That escalated quickly. Megan passed carrying a cooler. You should move your tent. I stared at her. Did Ryan recruit you? No. I have eyes. Traitor. The wind strengthened, pushing cold air through camp. I finally looked behind my tent and noticed something I had missed earlier. Water was gathering between the roots uphill, tracing thin silver lines through the dirt. Toward me. I felt my confidence quietly pack a suitcase and leave. Ryan appeared through the rain carrying a folded tarp. He did not smile. He did not say I told you so. Somehow that was worse. We have maybe 20 minutes before the heavier part reaches us, he said. I swallowed my pride. Fine. Help me move it. Ryan nodded once. Already planned on it. We had barely reached the first stake when thunder rolled overhead, loud enough to make everyone look up. The wind changed direction. Pine branches swayed above us, and the campground suddenly felt much smaller. Ryan grabbed the tent frame while I pulled the stakes. East side, he called. Near the rocks. I know. Of course you do. I looked at him through the rain. He was smiling again. Against every reasonable instinct, I smiled back. Neither of us noticed that while we were moving my tent towards safer ground, Ryan's own tent remained exactly where he had left it. The storm stopped feeling like weather at exactly 7:42 and started feeling personal. By then, everyone had abandoned dinner, packed away anything that could blow across the campground, and retreated beneath the covered shelter near the parking area. Rain swept through the pines in silver sheets, turning the trails into dark ribbons of mud. I stood inside my newly relocated tent, watching water stream harmlessly past the spot where I had originally camped. I hated being wrong. I hated being wrong when Ryan was right even more. Not one word. I told him when he appeared outside my tent. Rainwater ran from the hood of his jacket. I did not say anything. Your face said it. My face is innocent. Your face has never been innocent. He smiled. Your tent is dry. Yes. Because we moved it. I am aware. 20 feet east. Walker. I am done. He raised both hands, laughing, and for a moment the storm seemed less serious. Then another weather alert sounded from Megan's phone beneath the shelter. She called across the campground that everyone should stay close and avoid the exposed trail until the strongest part passed. Ryan looked toward his own campsite. His smile disappeared. I should check my tent. Leave it. My sleeping bag and half my gear are inside. Your gear can survive without emotional support. My sleeping bag cannot survive becoming a swimming pool. Before I could argue, he pulled his hood tighter and headed across the clearing. I watched him go, annoyed by the immediate knot of worry in my stomach. He knows what he is doing, Megan said behind me. I know. You are still watching him. I am watching the weather. The weather is apparently 6 feet tall and wearing a red rain jacket. I turned toward her. Do you ever get tired? Not when this is entertaining. A stronger gust swept through camp, bending the pine branches and sending loose needles skittering across the ground. My attention snapped back toward Ryan. He had reached his site and was securing one side of his rain fly when he suddenly looked toward the trees above him. Then he looked at me. Ethan. Something in his voice erased every stupid argument we had ever had. I was moving before I had time to think. Ryan hurried away from the site as a heavy branch came down through the upper canopy and landed across the empty tent. There was no dramatic crash, only a dull collapse beneath the rain, but my stomach dropped anyway. Ryan. I reached him near the edge of the clearing. He was standing, breathing hard, staring at what remained of his shelter. I am fine, he said immediately. I did not ask. You were about to. I was about to call you an idiot. That sounds more like you. I looked him over anyway. Wet jacket. Mud on one knee. No obvious injury. Relief arrived so quickly that it made me angry. Your tent is done. Excellent observation. Your sleeping bag? Ryan looked at the flattened fabric. Probably wetter than the lake. Megan called that we needed to get back under cover. Ryan nodded, but I noticed something strange near his ruined campsite. His tent was not where I remembered it being earlier. It sat several yards closer to the drainage line, almost exactly where the water had begun collecting behind my original site. I frowned. Wait. Ryan looked at me. What? You moved your tent. He hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. When? It does not matter. Ryan. Rain ran down my face as I stared at him. You moved mine east, then moved yours into the spot you told me was unsafe. Not exactly. That is exactly what you did. There was limited room once everyone started shifting gear. You could have taken the safer space. Ryan shrugged as though we were discussing parking spots. Your tent was already half moved. That is not an answer. His expression softened. You were not listening, Ethan. I needed you somewhere safe before the weather got worse. For once, I had no comeback. No joke. No competition. Just the uncomfortable realization that while I had spent the afternoon trying to beat Ryan Walker, Ryan had been quietly making sure I was all right. Thunder rolled somewhere beyond the campground. Ryan glanced at his destroyed shelter, then at my small tent 20 feet east. I followed his gaze. One tent. One dry sleeping bag. 2 people. Ryan sighed. I can stay under the shelter until morning. I looked at the rain blowing sideways through the open structure. Absolutely not. His eyebrows lifted. Miller, that tent is barely big enough for you. Then, congratulations. I grabbed his arm and pulled him toward it. You finally found something you cannot beat me at. What is that? I opened the flap. Personal space. By 8:15, I had learned 3 important things. First, my tent had been designed by someone who believed one human being required exactly enough space to regret every life choice that brought him camping. Second, Ryan Walker somehow occupied more room while sitting still than most people occupied while doing jumping jacks. Third, inviting him inside had been much easier than figuring out what to do once he was there. Move your backpack, Ryan said. My backpack was here first. Your backpack does not have legs. Neither does your wet jacket, but it has somehow claimed half the entrance. Ryan sighed and folded the jacket into a tighter bundle. We had spent 10 minutes arranging our gear with the seriousness of diplomats negotiating an international border. His soaked sleeping bag was useless, so Megan had passed us a spare lightweight blanket from her car before retreating to her own shelter. My sleeping bag remained dry, but it was not remotely large enough for 2 people. That left Ryan with the spare blanket and a foam pad squeezed beside mine. The result was approximately 6 inches of neutral territory between us. I considered marking it with tape. There, Ryan said, settling onto his side. Plenty of room. I stared at him. You have a fascinating relationship with the word plenty. I have slept in smaller places. Where? A mailbox. He laughed softly. Outside, rain drummed steadily against the tent. The worst wind had eased, but thunder still rolled across the mountains every few minutes. Inside, the air felt strangely quiet. Too quiet. There was nowhere to look without noticing Ryan. If I faced left, there was Ryan. If I faced right, there was nylon. I chose nylon. You can stop pretending I am not here, he said. I am not pretending. You have been studying that wall for 3 minutes. Interesting wall. What have you learned? It is green. Remarkable. I smiled despite myself. Then silence returned. The comfortable kind almost arrived, which was somehow worse. Ryan shifted beneath the blanket, and his knee brushed mine through 2 layers of fabric. I moved an inch away. Relax, he said. I am relaxed. You just moved like my knee insulted your family. Your knee has boundary issues. Another quiet laugh. I could feel it more than hear it in the cramped tent. That realization made me stare even harder at the wall. Ethan. There it was again. My first name. I turned toward him. What? Ryan was watching me, his expression unreadable in the dim glow of the small lantern between our bags. Why do you actually hate me? I blinked. That is a dramatic question. You have spent 2 years trying to beat me at everything. You started it. Did I? First hike. You reached the summit before me and said good effort like I was a child finishing a school race. Ryan stared at me for half a second, then covered his face with one hand. You cannot be serious. I remember it vividly. Ethan, I was trying to be nice. You sounded smug. I was nervous. That word did not belong anywhere near Ryan Walker. You? I asked. Nervous. Yes. Why? Ryan looked away. Because I wanted you to like me. My brain stopped functioning with impressive efficiency. Rain tapped against the tent. Somewhere outside, water trickled over rocks. That makes no sense, I finally said. You challenged me to race down the trail 20 minutes later. Because you challenged me first. Because I thought you were mocking me. I thought you were flirting with me. Silence. Complete, magnificent silence. I stared at him. Ryan stared back. You thought what? I asked. His ears turned slightly red. For the first time since I had met him, Ryan Walker looked genuinely embarrassed. Forget I said that. Absolutely not. Miller. No. You have opened this door. We live here now. Ryan groaned and looked toward the ceiling. This is exactly why I should have slept under the shelter. Too late. Explain. He was quiet for several seconds. Then his eyes returned to mine. Maybe you have misunderstood more about me than you think. Maybe you have misunderstood more about me than you think. Ryan said it quietly, and somehow that was worse than if he had laughed. I stared at him across the 6 inches between our sleeping pads while rain whispered against the tent. All right, I said. Explain the mysterious inner life of Ryan Walker. You are making me regret this already. You brought this upon yourself. He looked toward the ceiling. Do you remember the first hike after we met? Obviously. You cheated. I did not cheat. You somehow knew about the shortcut. It was marked on the map. Suspiciously convenient. Ryan smiled. You beat me to the overlook anyway. I remembered. I had reached the overlook maybe 30 seconds before him and celebrated like I had conquered Everest. Ryan had arrived laughing. I had assumed he was laughing at me. You looked ridiculously happy, he said. Because I won. Exactly. Something in his voice made me pause. Ryan turned his head toward me. You spent the entire hike pretending you did not care. Then you reached that overlook first and smiled like somebody had handed you $1 million. I liked seeing you like that. My thoughts stumbled over each other. So you challenged me again? Yes. Because you wanted to see me happy? When you say it like that, it sounds embarrassing. It is extremely embarrassing. Thank you. You are welcome. He shook his head, but he was smiling. I tried to fit this version of events over 2 years of memories. Ryan daring me to reach a trail marker first. Ryan challenging me to start a campfire with one match. Ryan betting me $5 that I could not identify a bird call. Every time I won, he had smiled. Every time I lost, he had found some excuse for a rematch. Wait, I said. The fishing trip. Ryan groaned. Please do not. You let me win. I did not. You spent 40 minutes teaching me how to cast properly. That is called helping. Then you conveniently stopped fishing. I was eating lunch. For an hour? It was a large sandwich. I laughed before I could stop myself. Ryan laughed too, and the sound settled into the small space between us, warm and strangely easy. For the first time, our history looked different. Not like a scoreboard. More like a conversation neither of us had understood. I really thought. You could not stand me, I admitted. Ryan's smile faded. Ethan, I moved my tent into a drainage path tonight because you refused to move yours. That was objectively a terrible decision. Yes. Your outdoor credibility has suffered. I will survive. I hesitated. Why did you do it? He looked at me as if the answer should have been obvious. Because you matter more than a tent. My chest went strangely tight. I searched for something sarcastic and found nothing. Outside, thunder rolled farther away now. The storm was beginning to loosen its grip on the campground. But inside the tent, everything felt more complicated. Ryan shifted slightly, and the narrow strip between our sleeping pads became narrower. Neither of us moved back. So, he said, do you still hate me? I need time to review the evidence. Naturally. There are 2 years of documented offenses, such as calling my coffee terrible. Your coffee is terrible. Case reopened. He smiled, then grew quiet. For what it is worth, I never hated you. I looked at him. Not even a little. There were moments. I knew it. Mostly when you sang that country song for 3 straight hours on the drive to Aspen. That was a classic. That was psychological warfare. I laughed again, But the laughter faded when I noticed the way he was looking at me. Not like an opponent. Not like someone waiting for the next joke. Just Ryan. Calm, uncertain, almost vulnerable. A soft flash of lightning brightened the tent, and our eyes met. For once, neither of us looked away. I realized then that the 6 inches between us had never felt so small, and that somewhere during the past 2 years, without either of us noticing, the competition had become something neither of us knew how to name. For several seconds, neither of us said anything, and silence had never felt so loud. Rain ticked softly against the nylon above us. The lantern between our sleeping pads cast a warm circle of light across Ryan's face, catching the tired curve of his smile. I should have made a joke. Jokes were safe. Jokes were where Ryan and I lived. Instead, I heard myself ask, so when did this ridiculous competition actually start for you? Ryan considered the question. Honestly, that would be a refreshing change. The first day, I blinked. The summit. Before the summit, he shifted onto his back, staring upward. At the trailhead, you were helping that older couple figure out which path led back to the visitor center. Everyone else was waiting, but you stayed until they understood the map. I remembered the couple vaguely. I definitely did not remember Ryan watching me. That impressed you? You were patient. I am extremely patient. Ryan turned his head toward me. You argued with a vending machine in Boulder because it kept your dollar. That machine knew what it did. His laugh came quietly. My point is, you were kind when nobody was paying attention. Then you walked over, introduced yourself, and immediately challenged me because Megan mentioned I usually reach the summit first. That sounds like me. It really does. I smiled, but Ryan continued. I wanted an excuse to talk to you again. So when you turned everything into a competition, I went with it. The smile disappeared from my face. For 2 years, I never claimed it was a good plan. You were telling me you have spent 2 years racing me up mountains because you did not know how to have a normal conversation. When you summarize it, I sound deeply incompetent. You once navigated 12 miles using a paper map during a snow flurry. Yes, but talking to me was too difficult. Ryan gave me a look. Have you met you? I laughed, then covered my mouth because the campground had gone quiet around us. Unbelievable. You asked. I did. Another rumble of thunder moved across the mountains, distant now, more echo than warning. I listened until it faded. You remember every time I won? I asked. Ryan nodded. Most of them. Most. Fine. All of them. Even the canoe race? Especially the canoe race. You celebrated for 20 minutes. I earned that victory. You won by 3 feet. 3 glorious feet. He smiled. You looked happy. The words were simple, but something about them landed differently now. All this time, I had thought Ryan's attention was judgment. Every glance had felt like measurement. Every challenge had seemed like another chance for him to prove something. But maybe I had been keeping the wrong score. Why did you never just tell me? I asked. Ryan's expression softened. Because you seemed convinced I annoyed you. You do annoy me. Thank you for confirming my instincts. That is not what I meant. Then what did you mean? I opened my mouth and discovered that my usual collection of clever responses had apparently evacuated the campground. Ryan waited. He did not rescue me from the silence. For once, he made me sit inside it. I do not know, I admitted. His eyes stayed on mine. That might be the first competition you have ever refused to finish. Do not get used to it. He smiled, and the familiar warmth returned. Then a cold drop of water fell from my hair onto my cheek. Before I could wipe it away, Ryan lifted his hand, paused, and gave me enough time to move. I did not. His fingers gently brushed the drop away. The gesture lasted barely a second. Still, every sarcastic thought in my head vanished. Ryan lowered his hand slowly. Sorry, he murmured. It is fine. My voice came out quieter than intended. Neither of us moved. The space between us suddenly felt measurable again. 6 inches. Maybe 5. I could hear his breathing beneath the rain. Ryan looked at me with the same uncertainty I felt twisting through my chest. Ethan, he said softly, there is something else you should know. There is something else you should know. Ryan's voice was so quiet that I almost blamed the rain for imagining it. I waited, suddenly aware that neither of us was joking anymore. His hand had returned to his side, but the place where his fingers had brushed my cheek still felt strangely noticeable. All right, I said. Tell me. Ryan drew a slow breath. Earlier, when Megan and I were talking near the trees, I thought I saw you walking back toward camp. My stomach tightened. Maybe. His eyes narrowed. You heard us. It was not a question. I considered lying for approximately half a second. I heard my name. Ryan closed his eyes. Of course you did. You said I was the reason you came. His eyes opened again. And what exactly did you think that meant? What was I supposed to think? We had been competing since I arrived. Tomorrow's navigation challenge was all you talked about. That is not all I talked about. It was most of it. Because every time I try to talk to you normally, you challenge me to something. You encourage me. Because I like you when you are competitive. My brain caught on two words. Like you. Ryan seemed to realize what he had said at the same moment. Because his expression shifted. I mean, I like being around you. That clarification did absolutely nothing to help. Right, I said. Brilliant. A masterful contribution to human conversation. Ryan looked down at the narrow strip of tent floor between us. You walked away before I finished what I was saying to Megan. There was more. There usually is after the middle of a sentence. You are choosing a dangerous time to become sarcastic. His smile returned briefly. You started it. I wanted to ask what the rest had been, but the question stuck somewhere behind my pride. Ryan seemed willing to wait. Outside, the rain had softened into a steady patter. The campground beyond our tent was almost silent. So, I finally said, what did I miss? Ryan looked at me. His expression became serious again. I told her I came because you would be here. My heartbeat stumbled. That sounds remarkably similar to the part one already heard. I was getting there. Please continue before I age significantly. He laughed under his breath. I said I wanted one weekend where maybe we could stop competing long enough to actually talk. That was not what I expected. You could have just talked to me. I tried. Last month, after the Bear Creek hike, I asked if you wanted to get dinner. I stared at him. You said the loser should buy burgers. Because you immediately said you could reach the parking lot before me. I searched my memory. He was right. That was irritating. Fine. Poor example. 2 weeks before that, I asked whether you wanted coffee. You said you knew a place with better coffee than mine. Because every conversation with you requires protective sarcasm. I laughed. That might be fair. Ryan's smile softened. The distance between us had somehow shrunk again. I was not sure who had moved. For inches, maybe. So you came here because you wanted to talk to me? I asked. Yes. And then challenged me all afternoon. I panicked. Ryan Walker panics? Apparently around one specific person. My chest tightened again, but this time I did not look away. The lantern painted small shadows beneath his eyes. He looked less like the impossible man who always knew what to do and more like someone who had been trying, badly, to be understood. That is almost charming, I whispered. Almost. Do not get greedy. Ryan smiled. Another inch disappeared between us. I could not tell whether he had moved or I had. He lifted his hand, then stopped before reaching me. Tell me to move. I should have. Instead, I stayed exactly where I was. Ryan's expression softened. The rain faded until all I could hear was our breathing and the occasional drip from the trees. Then a sharp snap sounded outside, followed by the sudden flutter of loose nylon above us. Ryan looked up. That was a stake. The tent wall pulled inward with the next gust. We moved at the same time, and whatever had almost happened between us vanished beneath a single immediate problem. If we wanted the tent to remain standing until morning, we had to go back into the storm. The moment I unzipped the tent, cold rain found every possible opening in my jacket. This is a terrible idea, I shouted over the wind. Ryan crawled out behind me. The alternative is waking up without a tent. I am beginning to think hotels were invented by geniuses. The loose corner of the rain fly snapped in the wind while one side of the tent bowed inward. I found the missing stake several feet away in the mud. Ryan grabbed the guy line and held it steady while I pushed the stake back into firmer ground. Angle it away from the tent, he called. I know how stakes work. You are holding it backward. I looked down. He was right. The rain is affecting my judgment. Naturally. Even in a storm, he found time to be annoying. Somehow, that made everything feel normal again. I reset the stake while Ryan checked the second line. Then, another gust swept through the trees, and he stepped toward the edge of our campsite to reach a loose strap. Ryan, leave it. It will take 2 seconds. Those are famous last words in every bad camping story. He glanced back with a grin. You worry too much, Miller. The ground beneath his boot was slick from runoff. His foot slid, and suddenly he dropped out of sight beyond the small slope beside the campsite. My entire body went cold. Ryan, I forgot the tent, forgot the rain, forgot every stupid competition we had ever invented. I hurried to the edge and found him only a few feet below, sitting in wet pine needles with one hand braced against a tree root. Relief hit so hard I had to close my eyes for a second. Ryan looked up. I am fine. You have got to stop saying that before I ask. I thought I would save time. This is not funny. The words came out sharper than I intended. His smile disappeared. I carefully made my way down and held out my hand. Ryan took it, and together we climbed back onto level ground. He tested his ankle, then frowned. A little sore. Inside. Now, Ethan, the line. I will fix the line. You just put the stake in backward. I have grown as a person. Ryan almost smiled. You are impossible. And yet apparently you came all the way out here because of me. That stopped him. For 1 second, neither of us moved. Rain ran from his hair and down the collar of his jacket. Inside, I repeated, quieter this time. Ryan nodded. I secured the remaining line, checked every stake twice, then crawled back into the tent. Ryan was sitting on the foam pad, carefully rotating his ankle. How bad? I asked. Not bad. Just twisted it a little. I handed him a dry towel and the small first aid pouch from my pack. He accepted both without argument, which worried me more than complaining would have. You scared me, I said. Ryan looked up. The sentence had escaped before I could stop it. I stared at the lantern. For approximately 3 seconds. Do not become arrogant. Would not dream of it. His voice was softer now. I sat beside him and helped wrap the ankle with an elastic bandage. My hands were still trembling slightly from the cold, or at least that was the explanation I preferred. Ryan noticed. Of course he noticed. Ethan. What? I am okay. I tightened the wrap and sat back. Stop making everything a joke. Silence filled the tent. Ryan studied me. You make everything a competition. That is different. How? I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. He waited. Rain tapped softly overhead again, quieter now. Because, I said finally, I did not know what else to do with you. Ryan did not smile. What does that mean? I looked at him, and suddenly the truth felt much more frightening than the storm outside. I do not know yet. His expression softened. Maybe you do. I looked away, toward the dark tent wall. Then the conversation I had overheard earlier returned to me. One unfinished sentence. One assumption I had carried through the entire evening. I turned back. Ryan, what exactly did you say to Megan after I walked away? Ryan was quiet long enough that I started wondering whether I had asked the wrong question. The lantern cast a soft amber glow across the tent while rain whispered overhead, gentler now, as if the storm had finally exhausted itself. Ryan adjusted the towel around his shoulders and looked at me. You really want to know? I have spent half the night constructing theories. I deserve closure. That sounds healthy. Walker. He smiled faintly, then the smile disappeared. I told Megan that I came because you would be here, and apparently I was still stupid enough to hope we might have one weekend where you looked at me like I was something other than the guy you had to beat. I stared at him. There it was. The missing half of the sentence. Not a challenge. Not arrogance. Not even rivalry. Just Ryan wanting me to see him differently while I had spent the afternoon preparing imaginary victory speeches. Oh, I said. Ryan raised an eyebrow. That is your response. My brain is currently reorganizing approximately 2 years of evidence. Take your time. Do not rush the investigation. Would not dream of it. I looked down at the bandage around his ankle, then back at him. Why did you never tell me? Ryan gave a quiet laugh. I tried, Ethan. Apparently your communication style is terrible. You are not exactly easy. I am delightful. You once turned my invitation for burgers into a foot race. You phrased it competitively. I said I knew a good burger place. Your tone implied confidence. Ryan laughed, and I did too, but the humor faded into something softer. I kept thinking you would eventually understand, he said. Then every time I tried to get closer, you challenged me again. So I challenged you back because at least that meant I got to spend time with you. That sentence settled somewhere deep in my chest. I thought about every trail, every campsite, every ridiculous race. I had called it rivalry because rivalry was simple. Rivalry had rules. Someone won. Someone lost. Whatever this was had no map. I thought you were judging me. I admitted. Ryan frowned. For what? Everything. My gear. My hiking pace. My terrible coffee. Your coffee deserves judgment. Thank you for preserving some consistency. But not you. His voice softened. Never you. I looked away because suddenly the green nylon wall seemed extremely important again. You make this very inconvenient. How? I have been confidently wrong about you for 2 years. You are handling it bravely. I appreciate your support during this difficult time. Ryan smiled. Then he shifted his sore ankle and winced slightly. Without thinking, I reached out and steadied his arm. My hand stayed there. His eyes dropped briefly to it, then returned to mine. Neither of us moved. Ethan, he said, you do not have to figure everything out tonight. That sounds suspiciously reasonable. I have moments. Rare ones. His smile returned, smaller this time. I slowly let go, but something had already changed. The old tension between us had not disappeared. It had simply revealed another shape underneath. I settled back onto my sleeping pad. Ryan carefully stretched out beside me again, leaving the familiar strip of space between us. 6 inches. Maybe less. Outside, the thunder had moved miles away. For the record, I said, staring at the ceiling, I never actually hated you. Ryan turned his head. No. You were irritating. Past. Tense. Do not push your luck. He laughed softly. I turned toward him, and this time I did not pretend I was looking at the wall. Ryan. Yeah. I think I finally understand why I kept competing with you. His expression changed. Why? I swallowed, suddenly aware of every inch between us. Because if I stopped trying to beat you, I might have had to admit how much I liked having you around. For a moment, Ryan did not say anything. He just looked at me as if I had finally answered a question he had stopped expecting me to understand. Outside, the storm had softened to a steady rain, and somewhere beyond the tent, water trickled through the rocks with a quiet, almost peaceful rhythm. You liked having me around, Ryan repeated. I immediately regretted possessing language. Do not make me say it twice. I am considering making you say it 3 times. And there he is. The reason emotional honesty was a mistake. Ryan smiled, but there was something careful behind it now. Something hopeful. I liked having you around too. Yes, apparently enough to turn every weekend into a competition. You participated enthusiastically. Because you were impossible to ignore. The words escaped before I could inspect them. Ryan's smile faded into surprise. I stared at the lantern. I am having a dangerously honest evening. I noticed. The weather is clearly responsible. Obviously. Silence settled again, but it was different now. Easy. Warm. The 6 inches between our sleeping pads no longer felt like a border. It felt like a question. I shifted slightly closer. Ryan noticed. Of course he noticed. His eyes dropped toward the space between us, then returned to mine. Miller, he said softly. What? You just crossed your invisible border. I looked down. Maybe 3 inches remained. Temporary immigration policy. Very generous. Do not abuse it. Ryan laughed quietly. I moved another inch. His expression changed again, humor giving way to something gentler. Ethan, hearing my first name from him still did something strange to my thoughts. Yeah. You do not have to prove anything. I know. And this is not another competition. I know that too. He studied me for a second. Are you sure? That was Ryan. Even now, even after 2 years of challenging me at every opportunity, he was giving me room to choose. I realized that might have been what he had been doing all along. Waiting at trailheads. Slowing down without announcing it. Offering help and pretending it was nothing. I closed the last inch between our sleeping pads until our shoulders rested lightly together. For once, Walker stopped trying to win. His voice was almost a whisper. What am I supposed to do instead? I looked at him. My heart was pounding hard enough to make me feel ridiculous, but I did not look away. You could kiss me. Ryan froze. It was possibly the first time I had ever seen him completely lose a response. I smiled. I would like this moment officially recorded. Quiet. Ryan Walker has no comeback. Ethan, this is historic. He laughed, and then he leaned closer, slowly enough that I could have changed my mind. I did not. Our first kiss was brief and gentle, more question than declaration, and when we pulled apart, Ryan looked almost stunned. I probably looked worse. Well, I whispered. That was inconvenient. His eyebrows lifted. Inconvenient. Now I have to reconsider several years of excellent insults. You can keep insulting me. Good. I was worried this relationship might require personal growth. Ryan smiled at the word relationship, and I realized I had said it without thinking. My face warmed. Do not. I did not say anything. Your face did. My face is innocent. I laughed because he had stolen my own line, and then we settled back beneath the quiet lantern glow. Our shoulders stayed together. Neither of us mentioned the missing 6 inches. Outside, the rain continued to fade, and the mountains disappeared into darkness beyond the tent. For 2 years, I had thought one of us needed to win before anything between us could change. Lying there beside Ryan, listening to the storm finally move away, I understood how wrong I had been. There was no finish line waiting for us. No scoreboard. No prize for arriving first. And for the first time since I met Ryan Walker, I did not want to beat him anywhere. I just wanted to stay exactly where I was. Morning arrived so quietly that for several seconds I forgot there had ever been a storm. Pale sunlight filtered through the green nylon, and somewhere outside, water dripped from pine branches in slow, patient taps. I opened my eyes and immediately discovered 2 things. Ryan was awake, and our shoulders were still touching. "Good morning," he said. "You are staring. I am observing. That defense did not work for me last night." Different jurisdiction. He smiled, and I hated how quickly that smile had become something I wanted to see. Ryan carefully sat up and tested his ankle. "Better?" I asked. "A little sore, but fine. No hiking challenge today. Are you forfeiting?" I stared at him. "You nearly lost shelter, spent half the night soaked, and twisted your ankle, and somehow you are still unbearable before breakfast. So that is a yes. That is me exercising extraordinary patience." We stepped outside into a campground transformed by morning. Pine needles covered the wet ground, puddles reflected a bright blue sky, and mist drifted between the trees. Megan spotted us from the picnic shelter and raised both eyebrows. "Well, look who survived." "Barely," I said. "Miller snores," Ryan added. I turned toward him. "I absolutely do not. Like a small tractor." "You are lying." Megan handed us coffee. "I am not getting involved in whatever happened inside that tent." I nearly dropped my cup. Ryan looked completely calm. "Of course he did. Nothing happened," I said too quickly. Megan stared at me. I did not ask. Ryan took a sip of coffee to hide a smile. "Traitor." Our friends eventually gathered near Ryan's ruined campsite, inspecting the soggy remains of his gear. Someone asked where he had slept. I prepared a perfectly reasonable explanation involving emergency shelter logistics, weather conditions, and responsible outdoor decision-making. Ryan simply pointed toward my tent. With him, 5 heads turned toward me. "Because of the storm," I added. Ryan nodded solemnly. "Very dangerous weather." Megan looked between us and smiled into her coffee. I decided friendship was overrated. The navigation challenge was canceled, partly because the trails needed time to dry and partly because Ryan's ankle deserved rest. Strangely, I did not care. A month earlier, losing a competition by cancellation would have bothered me for days. Now Ryan sat beside me at the picnic table, stealing pieces of my breakfast while pretending not to, and winning seemed like a much less interesting concept. 3 weeks later, we returned to the mountains with the same group. Ryan pulled a brand new tent from his SUV and dropped it beside me. I read the label. 2-person tent. Storm preparedness. This thing could survive a week of rain. Exactly. Separate sleeping pads? Obviously. I narrowed my eyes. You plan this. I plan everything. Except conversations. I am improving. Together, we carried the tent toward a flat clearing beneath the pines. It took us 9 minutes to set up because neither of us could resist correcting the other. When we finished, Ryan looked at his watch. "I think I did most of the work." "Interesting." I was about to say the same thing. "Race you to the lake?" I looked toward the trail, then back at him. "No." Ryan blinked. "No." I took his hand and started walking. "We can get there at the same time." For once, he did not argue. That evening, a light rain began tapping against the tent. Ryan glanced toward the ceiling. "Should we be worried?" "Only if your tent mysteriously disappears." I did bring a backup. I stared at him. "You brought another tent?" His guilty smile answered before he did. "Then why are we sharing this one?" Ryan squeezed my hand. "Storm preparedness." I laughed so loudly that someone in the next campsite told us to keep it down. Later, as rain whispered through the pines and 2 sleeping pads rested side by side without any carefully measured border between them, I finally understood something. Ryan and I had spent 2 years racing toward the same place without realizing it. It took one terrible night of weather to make us stop long enough to notice. And after that, neither of us cared who arrived first.